Maria, Ivan, Jose, and Julia have known each other since they started preschool. Ever since then, they've been inseparable. They knew what true friendship was. During their time at primary school, everything went smoothly. They were best friends, but then there was Ivan with tears in his eyes, hiding behind of the one columns in the schoolyard, asking himself, how did I get here? What have I done? This is where our story begins. The second year of high school was when everything changed. In high school, they discovered a new trend, the close groups. Almost everyone wanted to belong to one. And if you didn't, it seems that you weren't as cool. The leader of the groups surrounded themselves with the weaker ones to subtly deceive them by telling them that to be great like them, they have to be part of one group. They created the trend of the groups to manipulate. The bad thing about the groups was that not everything was as cool as they said. When someone wanted to join a group, they were forced to take a series of unethical tests. That's how it all started with the thought of the groups. Things started out like that, but they went from bad to worse, getting more and more awkward. Maria decided to ignore the groups, so they left her alone. Jose, Ivan, and Julia tried to join them. The tests were difficult because even though Javi had told them that they have to fight to get into his gang, the only thing he really wanted was to split up the four friends. Javi had never had any real friends, so he enjoyed watching the four of them start to get angry with each other. The first test was for Jose. He had to deliberately fail 2 exams. The worst thing was that it was for nothing, because in the end, Javi told him that his clothes didn't go well with the group and wouldn't let him in. So Jose was left out of Javi's group. He felt so embarrassed that he tried to hide it. Julia, however, did manage to get into Javi's group. When she got in, Javi gradually started badmouthing Jose and Maria until he got her to stop talking to them altogether. It seemed as if Julia had suddenly forgot about Maria, who she had been with her whole life, and without asking to take a stupid test in return. Ivan knew that Jose hadn't made it into the group, so Ivan felt that he would make it any way he could, and he did. The worrying thing was that his test consisted of pushing Jose down the stairs. At first he thought, I push him slowly, I won't hurt him. If I didn't want to hurt him, why would I push him? Javi was a manipulator, and Ivan hadn't even noticed. The time had come. They were all walking up the stairs. Javi and Julia watched Jose closely. Julia didn't know what the test was about. Javi was too smart to risk her warning Jose of stopping Ivan. Javi had watched as Ivan hesitated. He went pale at the thought of pushing his real friend, Jose. Ivan couldn't do it. When he saw himself there, something stopped him, perhaps his sanity. It was then when Javi, making everyone believe that it was Ivan, pushed Jose hard. Jose hit the floor. Now there was the sound of an ambulance. And there was Ivan in the courtyard leaning on the pillar crying. He just wanted to know that his friend was unhurt. Maria, who was spontaneous, ran to see Jose as soon as she found out. She didn't care that he was no longer speaking to her. She just wanted to see that he was all right. Jose was sitting in the ambulance and she simply sat down next to him. It wasn't serious after all. Jose looked into her eyes and asked for forgiveness. Maria hugged him naturally and honestly. While their two were chatting, Julia burst with tears on her eyes, shouting, "I knew everything!" Despite all the commotion around the ambulance, Javi was still threatening Julia. "If you leave, Julia, the three of you will be on my list." His list was a list where he wrote down the name of the ones who would be hit by those wanting to join his group. On that list was Jose, which was why he was now in the ambulance. Jose and Maria quickly stood up to defend her and block Javi. Julia looked at him and said, "Your list? Talk to the police." When they heard about the police, many of El Grupo who were surrounding Javi let him all alone. Javi seized the moment by shouting, "It was Ivan! It was Ivan! I was there!" Maria and Jose went pale. "Ivan?" Maria reacted, "It was impossible." Then Julia said that she was a witness, took Javi the police were waiting for. She made it clear to Jose and Maria that Ivan hadn't even tried to push Jose. Maria realized that no one knew where Ivan was, who in the midst of all the chaos has disappeared. Maria, who knew Ivan very well, knew where he will be, by that column, where on the first day of school they have written their four names, linked with the word friendship. She ran toward him. Ivan was devastated. He thought about what a bad person he was. He was afraid to know how Jose was doing. Maria told him that Jose was fine. It was time to listen to his heart, to stop being afraid and to go and see him. Ivan went to the ambulance. Crying, he approached Jose and said nothing. Jose, who had listened to Maria so many times about listening to your heart, looked at Ivan and said, "Good people also make mistakes. I had never failed in my life before because I don't like to, but Javi managed to make me forget what I like. Today, I'm going to stop doing what others want, and I'm not going to lose my friends anymore. What's more, I propose that we make an open group of friends, and do you know what you have to do to join? Absolutely nothing." The four of them embraced each other, and from that day on, Maria, Jose, Ivan, and Julia were volunteers. They were in charge of telling newcomers, that if someone is your friend only because you do what he or she wants, then that was not friendship. Friendship is being honest with your friends, respecting them, and loving them as they are. And that thing about the heart that Maria would say. Maria warned Julia, Jose, and Ivan to be careful as she saw how they tried to convince the three of them to join. She told them that some people were asked to fight as a test to get into a group, to steal or even bullying, which was unthinkable. "But don't you see that when someone is your friend, they don't ask you to do a test? If I'm from a different group than you, why can't I be your friend? We have been friends all our lives, and that's the best thing. Listen to your heart and see what it tells you, said Maria, upset. The thing is that because you don't dare to give Andrea a simple pause, you know you'll never get in the group, said Yvonne. It's not that. It's just that I don't want to push Andrea, replied Maria. They are used, but used being made into tests, concluded Julia. And what are they going to ask you to do afterwards? Reflected Maria. Forget about her, said Jose.